By sheer coincidence, having focused on the possessive and destructive obsession of a female abuser in the previous movie on this list, at number 7 is Bad Guy, a film which took all of our shared fears and assumptions regarding toxically abusive and obsessive relationships and the exploitation of women, and then added a dollop of a painfully disturbing reality of the cycle of abuse, the variation on the Helsinki syndrome, which not only causes victims to stay with their abusers and to rationalise their own mistreatment at every possible turn, but to even find a twisted form of comfort, meaning and purpose in their own exploitation and abuse, making Ki-Duk's depiction of the slow erosion and destruction of a human life and spirit so engaging and in a sickening way poetic that I was compelled to continue watching until the ending of the movie robbed me of any desire I may have ever had to live on this planet or on any other. Indeed, watching this film is like being trapped by someone and then losing all will to resist as they hug you tightly, whispering how much they love you as they slowly bleed you to death, meaning that Ki-Duk genuinely deserves praise for creating what is essentially an abusive relationship between himself and the audience, allowing us, or rather compelling us, to sympathise with victims of this kind of abuse in real life. Of course, as I've suggested, if not outright stated in the previous videos in this series, we can only ever genuinely understand this if we choose to look beyond the superficial and to dig deeper, to put aside the mindset that we are here to be told a story and thus fail to interact with the film on any kind of intellectual and emotional level. And as a matter of fact, it's taken me multiple viewings and a great deal of reflection to realise just how deep this rabbit hole goes. So although it's nowhere near as graphic and contains much less distressing imagery than The Isle or Mobius, for example, this is a film which genuinely helps us to understand where Ki-Duk's detractors are coming from when they accuse him of creating misogynistic exploitation porn, as I defined the term back in the introduction to this top 10, specifically that he is glorifying and revelling in human suffering, misery and abuse. But in defiance of these claims though, he never glorifies nor condemns, merely forcing us to face up to the harsh realities that we would all prefer to ignore because they shatter our self-righteous moral absolutes. On top of which showing us the quest for meaning, God, enlightenment, or even some small sliver of contentment or happiness, no matter how brief or false it may be, which people in such circumstances are often compelled to take because it is the only alternative to allowing themselves to be totally consumed by suicidal despair. As I've hopefully made clear by this point then, although it's a cinematic triumph and I genuinely applaud Ki-Duk with every fibre of my being for creating it, I didn't enjoy this movie in the slightest, and even to this very day cannot even think about the bleak and barren conclusion without feeling as if a Dementor has wrapped its cold, dead fingers around my throat. Harry Potter reference for the win. But in terms of hard-hitting and complacency-shattering reality though, this film is almost definitely number one, because come on people, a film about exploitation and abuse isn't meant to be enjoyed, and if you do enjoy it, then there's something either desperately wrong with you or with the creator. Having already leapt several kilometres ahead of myself, however, the synopsis of this film is that a violent thug, pimp and gangster becomes pathologically obsessed with a woman who he meets entirely by chance, a petty thief forced into sex work in order to pay back all of the money that she's stolen. This is perhaps the dictionary definition of exploitation, objectification and abuse, but as the hopelessness destroys her inch by inch, the woman gradually becomes obsessed with the thug until in the end they cannot live without each other. Although in the past, including earlier in this video, I've always described this as the cinematic epitome of a toxic and abusive relationship with two empty and emotionally broken people keeping each other company in hell, at least one person who I used to know interpreted this film as being zen, with the woman and the thug each detaching themselves from worldly concerns and forming a spiritual bond which went beyond sex or what most of us would consider to be love. And bearing in mind the Buddhist influences which form the basis of so much of Kim Ki-Duk's other work, as well as his tendency, if not his outright passion for blending brutal reality with spiritual transcendency in order to create a yin and yang, I cannot dismiss that interpretation. But while their relationship may be zen though, as I indicated earlier, the most distressing aspect of this movie, not softened in the slightest by the stunning visual beauty of the cinematography, is that in the broadest sense it portrays the terrifying reality of far too many people's actual lives. That is to say, although their circumstances may not be as brutal or as extreme, across the world many people are actually living in this kind of relationship, and honestly believing that even if it isn't true love in inverted commas, then it is at least still not anything fundamentally bad or wrong, or anything from which they should attempt to escape. In conclusion, in fact, watching this film always causes me to imagine Kim Ki-Duk throwing his camera in our faces as he quotes the infamous line from Gladiator,
"Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?"
Because if instead of always merely seeking entertainment, treating filmmakers and other creators like performing monkeys at whose feet we throw coins as we clap along and they dance for our amusement, if we actually paid attention, engaging with the work, instead of expecting them to spoon-feed us thrills, happiness, romance or what have you, then I genuinely believe that the work of Kim Ki-Duk and countless other creators could make us all better people by enriching our souls and challenging us to question ourselves, as well as to question the assumptions and moral absolutes which allow such exploitation, misery and suffering to remain ignored.